Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. My name is Chung-hyun Kim. I have worked as principal researcher in the Untitled Evaluation Center. It's my honor to introduce our marmoset research work. As you know, monkeys are closer to human beings. Recently, animal study based on monkey is very important in research area for human. Although marmoset monkey is small, but they are also monkey species, so they can be useful in research. So I would like to introduce briefly our research works using marmoset monkey in our institute. Today's contents are as follows. So facilities, usefulness of marmoset in research, and research work what we are doing, and the conclusion. So our center has 8 kinds of animal from small mouse to large monkey. We have various devices, facility, and manpower for research work. Interestingly, our center constructed animal biosafety level 3 facility last year. So now we are doing test learning, and we can provide ABL3 services soon or later. Our center was accredited by ALAG International and accredited as an excellent laboratory animal facility by Korean FDA. Our animals have been managed by qualified SOP. To maintain the good health of marmoset, we provide routine daily care, controlled diet, and a good environment with enrichment. Disease and pain were prevented and managed by veterinary care. Our center have maintained a colony of marmoset to meet the research needs. Pregnant animals and weak neonates were managed by special procedures. And the total number of marmoset was about 300, and approximately 90 babies were born annually in 2022. And now our facility has become almost 2.2 times bigger. We extended our facility, so we expect that more than 200 baby monkeys will be born within 5 years. The advantage of marmoset in research work as follows. Marmoset can provide safety for researchers because they have a rare disease for human, so they have rare zoonosis. And small size, they are small, so they can provide easy, we can handle it easily. So their size is similar with the rat. They have similarity for function and structure of human because they are a monkey. And last, they have good reproductive performance in terms of early puberty and production of large number of babies. So representative advantage is similarity to human. They have cognitive function, so they can ingest the drug by self-administrating when they want to take drugs. And in addition, they have a motor function as the same as human. However, there are some critical disadvantages, as you can see in the slide. Marmosets are so sensitive, so restraint should be minimized in marmoset research. And marmoset skin is fragile, so they have a limitation in transplantation research. And small size can be also a limitation because they have a small volume of blood and small structure. Last, anatomical variation between individuals can be a problem for research. According to advantages and disadvantages, we use marmoset in neuroscience, reproduction, and behavior research. However, we avoid the use of marmoset in transplantation study, restraint requiring study, and structure study. In our institute, using the reproductive performance of marmoset, they have been used in transgenic research. This slide shows in vitro fertilization and growing eggs of marmoset during 10 days. We used marmoset in drug addiction research. So when marmoset wanted to take the drug, they touched the switch and the drug was leaked from the spot. And marmoset would be ingested by mouse. You can see in the video. In addition, we can simultaneously test 6 animals based on small size advantages. So you can see here. We have used marmosets in various neuroscience research such as cannulation in specific brain area, neurochemical study, and so on. We have used marmoset in various pharmacological research areas such as respiratory function test, pharmacokinetic study, and biodistribution study. Using plethysmography, we evaluated the respiratory functions such as tidal volume after drug administration. To evaluate pharmacokinetic of anti-VEGF drug, we administered the drug into vitreous humor and then collect the vitreous humor at prescribed time. Another popular service is biodistribution test of fluorescence tagging drug using IV system. So finally, marmosets have many advantages on researchers. However, some disadvantages coexist. Therefore, our center have developed and tried to find proper and useful marmoset applications such as neuroscience, drug addiction test, transit research, and so on, based on developing non-clinical evaluation methods in marmoset. We can provide high quality and close research for human to demand of researcher and medical industry. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce a bit about myself. In 2011, I finished my degree at the Carnegie Institute of Science and Technology, mentioned before. And then I joined the LG Electronics, the senior researcher. Now currently I study here and worked for Boston Medical Innovation Foundation as a principal researcher. My research field is 3D optical inspection automation system and confocal-based fluorescence molecular imaging and in the microscopy. And optical imaging system in biomedical field in vitro diagnostic device. So many, but today I focus on digital healthcare system, like the wearable device and its service model. As we was introduced to our foundation earlier in the morning, our foundation has established to nurture high-tech medical industry by spreading the fruition of research activation and commercialization. It is largely comprised of 4 centers as new drug and medical device and biopharm manufacturing center and laboratory animal center. I belong to medical device development center. Our medical device center supports the mediation of research that form the basis for joint medical R&D and commercialization, and strengthens the cooperative network aid established the advanced medical device developed and support and obtained internationally recognized performance certification and assessment for independent and industry academia cooperative R&D. The final support for joint research development of BT-based medical appliance. In particular, we have the 3-part area of focus: research part, and production part, and evaluation part. Now I am in the research part. When I received this topic, the topic name is digital medical device, but I don't know how explain the digital medical device, but I just defined this medical device like this. It's a biomarker-based digital medical device business. As you know, the digital biomarker we can achieve from the wearable device or digital imaging system. So I just two categories, digital biomarker and my based on digital biomarker is we finally make the digital medical device. To propose digital medical device is the medical device used to diagnose, predict, prevent, and manage disease by collecting, analyzing, and predict digital biomarkers. Digital biomarkers is objective and quantitative biosignal or image collected and measured through digital tools such as wearable device and digital imaging device, and biological phenomena and measurement device, also IVD and the others. First, I introduced a study with a wearable medical device. As you know, the biosignal is any signal in human being that can be continually measured and monitored. This is EEG, which measures brain wave, and this is EOG, which measures eye movement, and ECG, which measures the electrical activity of heart. EMG is measured the electrical activity of muscle, and also blood pressure and PPG right there. Various wearable devices have been developed for biosignal measurement. Wearable device is category of electronic device that can be worn as accessories and embedded in clothing implanted in the user body. You can see the EEG is handbell type, and the EOG is good glasses type, and ECG is patch type. The others is like the handheld or the other type. This slide shows the trend in the development of wearable device technology. The first generation original device like benchtop type, and in the next generation from portable and attachable and implantable, the finally ingestible device. In the past 5 years, as ICT technology has developed, wearable device and digital healthcare service using them have developed. User wearing wearable device can manage and monitor their personal health using mobile app even in their daily life. Since COVID-19, Untitled healthcare monitoring systems have grown significantly around the world. In South Korea, there have also been attempts to measure biosignals such as the ECG and SpO2, heart rate, and Untitled health management monitoring system using them. Our foundation has started the patient healthcare monitoring and tracking system to unimplanted self-quarantine healthcare platform for disinfection against COVID. We have developed the two types of wearable device such as the band type and patch type, which measure temperature, SpO2, heart rate, blood pressure. Also, we have the patient monitoring and tracking using ICT technology. Our proposed system composed of the wearable device and gateway administrator web page. A wearable device are divided into hardware and software. This figure shows the digital circuit and two circuit board, main sensor board and RF board. After acquiring new raw ECG and PP signal, a signal processing algorithm to remove noise and increase the SNR was built into the MCU chip. This is a final prototype which provide the function such as ECG, SpO2, heart rate, the temperature. We built a communication gateway to transfer the data to web server using low power wide area network called the LoRa communication. This is the gateway system that we made. The last part is the administrator web page. This is the user dashboard. Click the patient name and then it's like this. You can check the history information, including personal health information, measured by wearable device such as a vital sign. We demonstrate our system to be tested silver healthcare service in senior care center. The full remote healthcare monitoring for motion monitoring indoor and outdoor, and finally emergency monitoring. As you know, the applying the digital healthcare technology to hospital, our patients required medical device certification. Previously developed techniques and products were wearable devices characterized by industrial product. We just called the well-listed product. We have the attempt to move industrial product to medical product, considering medical device standard. From this slide, I talked about the smart medical platform. Pilot model project is supported by the Korean government 2021 to 2024. This project is aimed to obtain the medical device approval for wearable device for measuring vital signs such as the SpO2 or temperature or the ECG or not. Because to provide them to hospital for medical purpose. Currently, the temperature the wearable device has been certificated by the Korean FDA. And the others, we are now trying to trial clinical test with the Korean hospital, the Ansan team. We have the capability to develop the circuit-based IoT sensors and its operation with the firmware software on the medical device license regulation. Design logic of the firmware software is as follows, like this. You can maybe place the small word, maybe this slide, you can check the which sensor or the model numbering. So based on the STM32 series MCU, we designed and developed the sensor control such as PPG and by temperature, low power operation with memory and battery and communication and OLED display. In addition, to increase the light efficiency of PPG, light efficiency according to the structure location, the PPG sensor was simulated and analyzed by using the optical the simulator software under the virtual artificial skin condition. We apply the optical condition with the PPG to actual product. In order to use it, non-contact skin infrared sensor by mounting it on a wearable device, we manufactured a temperature sensor module and measured the accuracy of temperature sensor and the deviation between sensor. This result showed the accuracy and the deviation between the sensor. In order to the medical device product to be recognized, such a component inspection must be performed. The PPG signal reacts sensitivity when moving over the resting as follows, like this, which reduce the diagnostic accuracy when analyzed accurate PPG data and extracting heart rate or other biomarkers. To compensate for this This signal processing algorithm was developed and loaded into the MCU to produce a print signal as follows. This signal is from our skin. We can acquire the print image, print signal. We adopted the BLE wireless data communication method to transmit the biometric information measured from a wearable device to a mobile web in real time. The transmit the signal is PPG data in addition to temperature, heart rate, and oxygen saturation. Because continuously measured data must be transmitted in real time within a limited memory and battery. A data transmission protocol was finally defined. So it was confirmed that biomedical information was delivered in real time through the web as follows. This one. This slide shows the screen configuration of the developed wearable device. When you first click the main screen, click the main screen, the four measurement button creates as follows: is the heart rate, oxygen saturation, and body temperature. Or the three functions at the same time, we can measure them. So this button is like this. If you move, movement is detected during the measurement, an error message is created, and then the screen switched to a real measurement screen. So click the measure button again. In addition, we include Bluetooth, like this button, a Bluetooth connection and screen configuration diagram required for medical device standard. This shows our result with a certified medical device test report, certificate of GMP product certification by Korean FDA. Also, maybe this not included. The IND approval we have. Now we prepare the clinical test with the pulse oximeter, temperature, heart rate in the Ansan hospital. This is our final product with the mobile app integration. This part is another part. Maybe before I just introduced the wearable device. This part is the digital imaging technique. But I shortly explained that we have 6 parts that we are introduced to you. The first is the in vivo molecular imaging, as you know, the fluorescence lifetime imaging. And the second part is the photo or post image we have. Also, with another part is the in vitro diagnostic device with the 4 companion diagnosed with the drug. The next part is the detection of blood vessel in tissue is integrated with the acoustic driven the cure system. It's like the in-surgery system, The next is the OCT system. Therefore, as you know, the endoscopy imaging, we are the core technology. With this data imaging technology, we are some result. As you can see, the medical product, we are the success, the medical product, the endoscopy and the IVD, and also the near infrared, the fluorescence imaging system, and also the IVD system. Also, we are transfer the technology to the company, the real-time PCR by our own technology, and combine the microscopy and 3D optical inspection. As a final slide, so thank you for listening to my talk. I would like to appreciate the inviting me this section. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about 4D printing. So I want to talk about some innovations from my lab in regards to not just traditional 3D printing and prototype development, but added levels of sensing or actuation, and then how this can apply to the medical field. So today I want to give a little bit about the background of the work and the need, and then show you kind of from the bottom up. So we start at the material level and design materials to match our sensing needs, so to match the circuitry that we need to produce, okay? So I'm going to begin with that, and then I'll show applications of sensing and how we use them in robotic actuators, and then how this can be applied to things like rehabilitation and sensing devices, just like the last speech. So as was previously stated, a little bit of my background and how it applies to the biofield. My bachelor's degree is in biomedical engineering. My master's degree is in ag and bioengineering, but I was definitely appreciating the equipment that I saw around the facilities. In my world, my master's is in biotechnology, so I did a lot with 2-photon confocal microscopy and fluorescence for drug-conjugated nanoparticles for cancer. Then I went on to get my PhD in the same field, but in that one I focused on machine systems. So at Purdue, I do a lot with the mechanical engineering technology side. That's where I reside. After finishing up my degree, I went to industry for a while. So I started in engineering at a contract manufacturing company. We made a large range of devices, some to traditional industrial fields, more mechanical, and then several low-class medical devices. I was talking before, we even had the KFDA come to visit me. I was in quality and regulatory as my last position there. So I got to have a visit from them. Then I came to Purdue after that, and my lab is AATL, so Adaptive Additive Technologies Lab. We do a lot with 3D printing. So we've done some SLA, DLP technologies. What I'm focused on now is traditional FDM manufacturing and integration of basically smart parts into that. So with traditional FDM, basically what we're looking at is we're melting a plastic filament, and it's being extruded through a nozzle to a set diameter. And you're following a model, so you've developed a three-dimensional design, a prototype, and then you're slicing that into individual layers, and it's following that path to produce it. So what we do differently is, instead of using off-the-shelf materials, we design our own plastic filaments or thermoplastic filaments to create that added structure. I also want to introduce a little bit here about direct ink writing. So we also do a lot of that in my lab. So in direct ink writing, it's a syringe-based extrusion process. So you can extrude liquids or hydrogels or different viscosities of materials. So we'll use that for adding additional circuitry, using conductive ink materials. We also use, in our process where we produce our conductive filament primarily, we also have other additives. We can make it magnetic as well. But in that process, it creates a liquid first, and then we turn that back into a solid state for traditional 3D printing. But in the liquid state, we can also utilize direct ink writing as well to create thin layers. Okay, so that fourth dimension that we're looking at with 3D printing. So the fourth dimension, as I consider it, is sensing, actuation, computation, or a grouping of those pieces and parts. All right, so those raw materials that we were talking about, our product is really that filament, okay? And there are commercially available, for example, conductive, that's the examples that I'm going to show today, are primarily conductive filaments. So they're commercially available filament materials, but they have limitations. If you've ever tried to print with them, what you'll see is that they're inconsistent. So at some point they'll be highly conductive, and then at another point you'll get very different results as it continues through. They're also rather difficult to print with, so that can cause challenges. And most of the work that we do is focused on viscoelastic materials. So we're looking at things like thermoplastic polyurethanes. I also do molding with traditional PDMS or silicone materials as well. Okay, so how our material compares to what's commercially available. So these are the top 3 are conductive filaments that are available on the market. And you can see the values here. These are resistivity, so how that relates to conductivity. So our material is more conductive than what is traditionally available. The material that we're looking at right here, we've added our conductive particles, which are carbon nanofibers, they're CNFs, to PLA, polylactic acid, and also to thermoplastic polyurethane, TPU. The results you're seeing here are for TPU. Okay, so what does it look like? What's the process look like? This is a wet mix. So most of the traditional manufacturing for 3D printed filament is a dry mix process. And we tried that, it didn't work out very well. So in turn, we developed this wet mix procedure. So basically, we take traditional PLA or TPU material, and we include a solvent with it and create a liquid substrate. And to that, or one side of it, we mix in carbon nanofibers. And these materials, these were selected because of their aspect ratio. We tried several different materials. They're also low cost, but for the cost and the aspect ratio, you get a strong conductive network throughout the material. So once these are wet mixed in, we do a mixing process to further create a homogeneous environment, basically, for the material. And then we evaporate back out the solvent to create a solid structure. At that point, you can, before evaporating back out the solvent, you can use it in direct ink writing procedures as well. But we often will evaporate it out and create a solid substrate. After we've done that, we use a extruder to create the traditional 1.75 millimeter 3D printable material. This is an SEM image showing, and this is from one of our sensors, so this material has been extruded back out and then 3D printed into a sensor prototype. We fractured it, and this is an SEM image. This is a 10 weight percent CNF, so we did try several weight percentages of material. Demonstrated here is 5 through 10. We've went a little higher. The 7.5 and the 10 weight percent definitely show the best characteristics and the best use in sensor environments. So most of the work that you're going to see is focused on those two. But you can clearly see the CNFs visible in the SEM image, demonstrating that conductive network. So what we're looking at is really piezoresistivity. All right, so some of the challenges that we've seen with this work. We did a full design of experiments to find the optimal temperatures, the optimal number of extrusions, the wet mix versus dry mix process to actually create this filament. It is extremely temperature sensitive, particularly in the extrusion stage. The extruder we use is a single screw extruder. If you have twin screw extruder, then it's going to create higher torque and better mix, but we do the mixing actually in the wet mix process to start with. So the single screw extruder is really just for that final filament design. But those are definitely challenges that we've seen. You also have degradation of the material with a higher number of extrusions. So there's an optimal amount that is material dependent. This comes from the fact that we do have CNF materials that have different thermal heat transfer properties in comparison to the base polymer material. So we get heat pockets and then we'll get breakdown. You can see here in the top images, so over here on the right-hand side, you can see the blocks which demonstrate print quality. We utilize those in the design of experiments to optimize those temperatures and number of extrusions. So you can see in the leftmost block how the material is not smooth. So we had challenges there with with that thermal degradation, and also if we have poor mix due to limited extrusions, then we'll have basically the CNFs on the surface instead of throughout, which causes agglomerations and inconsistency in the print. So we address this by optimization, so by utilizing a software package to help us optimize those values. Okay, so that's the material itself, and now I'm going to show you what it looks like in sensors. So we've used these for traditional strain gauges. Now what's unique and neat about these strain gauges is instead of adding, in a traditional strain gauge environment, you have to use an adhesive to adhere the strain gauge to the surface of whatever component you're looking at, and then you're going to monitor that deformation, and it's going to show you a change in resistance. Here we have it embedded in the part because our material itself is the strain sensor. So you can have strain sensing at the top surface of the part, in the middle, at the bottom, throughout the entirety of the product. So that's one of the advantages. We can also do this with flexible material. The thermoplastic polyurethane is very rubbery. It basically feels like a rubber material. So we can do it with soft prototypes and also stiff. So this is the traditional ASTM dog bone design, and so we tested our strain gauges utilizing that. So here you're looking at results from two different weight percentages, the 7.5 and the 10 weight percentage. And you can see here, there is some variability between the two. And that's what we found consistently in our results. So what this actually tells us is we have a different range of sensing dependent upon the material that we're using. So for example, the 7.5 weight percent material, it shows a higher resistance change ratio, which really means it's more sensitive, okay? But it has a smaller working range. So you can target the material that you're wanting to use based on the sensor you're wanting to design. So if you know the range of strain that you're looking at, then you can target that percentage and even the particles added to match what you need. So the 10 weight percent will work for a larger range, but in the initial first few percentages of strain, it's not going to be as sensitive. Okay, then we applied this. We wanted to see if we could not only detect strain, but also if we could detect location and differences between loads. Okay, so we wanted to use this as a force sensor, and we wanted to be able to see if I could detect force here versus force here. Okay? So we elongated those dog bone-like designs, and we placed them in a silicone matrix that looked like this. So this is just traditional two-part PDMS that we cured in a mold. And we had a bottom layer, which insulates my circuit, and then a sensor layer, and then 90 degrees from that, we have an insulator, and then 90 degrees from that, we've got the second sensing layer. So we have both directions, horizontal and vertical, within one grouping. And then the top mold serves as another insulator. So this is what the final product looks like, and then we monitor the resistance changes off of each of these sensors. So we tried single point loading and multi-point loading. So we applied 3 different forces, so 20, 30, and 40 Newton loads at individual points, and then we put 2 different forces at 2 points at the same time. And so we wanted to see if we could detect the differences in magnitude and also the locations. So this image shows the results of that. So the color coding, you can see the bar over here. So right there. And you can see the differences in color. There is a relationship between proximity, so proximity to the actual sensing element that does impact the results. But you can clearly see a difference in our resistance results based on load. So we can tell the difference between a 20 Newton load and a 30 Newton load. We can also tell location. So based on those sensing elements, we can tell which sensors were activated to be able to impact the location. So we can tell proximity and load. Okay, now we have utilized these in EAP, dielectric electroactive polymer, sensors, and in actuators. I won't talk a lot about the actuator aspect of this as well, but they do function in both modalities. So in an EAP sensor, it's basically a parallel plate capacitor. So we've got a dielectric material in the middle, in the light blue section, and it's sandwiched by two conductive electrodes. So in my case, I can use the thermoplastic polyurethane that we traditionally print. It has a strong dielectric constant, so it can be used within it. And we've got the two conductive layers on either side. That can be our printed material, or we can use inks for that as well. So we placed these dielectric electroactive polymer capacitance-based sensors within traditional 3D prints. So this is all one 3D printing process. So we're doing everything on a Lulzbot TAS6 printer. And the goal here, this was for industry, and it was basically an on-off sensor. So I was trying to detect if a part was placed here or not. And I can detect the size of the part or the weight of the part. So it's a pressure sensor. We also utilized finite element analysis modeling to help us design the size of our sensor and our expected results from it. This is our testing, so we just increase the weight and monitor the overall pressure and the capacitance coming out of it. Some of the results you'll see are in capacitance values, others are in voltage. They're converted with CAF, because often when we're using a feedback loop, we need a voltage input. So here's the computational simulation as well as the experimental results. They matched very well. And what's unique here is you see both the 7.5 weight percent and the 10 weight percent material. And in these, you can see differences once again in the range and also in the initial peak. So it's the same story. So the 7.5 weight percent, it's more sensitive in the lower weight percentages or in the lower pressure values. But you can see a larger change, a larger capacitance value for the 10 weight percent material. Okay, so we also utilize these in soft actuator applications. So this is for robotics. We're also looking at utilizing these in rehabilitation devices, so reteaching emotion, for example. So here I use the same thermoplastic polyurethane material, and we use it to 3D print. These are just a couple examples of using it in rehabilitation devices. But we 3D print these structures out of our materials. So we will 3D print the pneumatic actuator out of thermoplastic polyurethane, and then we'll add our sensors directly to it. So here's what an example of the rehabilitation sensor itself looks like. So utilizing the same material I've talked about, we added those strain gauges onto a glove design. We did test several different geometries of those of the 3D printed sensor itself and monitored the output. So the motion that we're looking at here is just curving your finger. We have a fixed point at the wrist. It is human testing, so there is some variability between operators as they move their finger, and we monitored the resistance response. So from this work, we selected the middle the middle sensor as the optimized geometry. And this demonstrates the change in resistance that we see for those designs. So how that's useful. In occupational therapy, physical therapy, whether it's stroke or different types of conditions that can cause those types of things, we often need to do those exercises, right? And at first you're taught how to do the exercises with a physical therapist, and then you're told you need to go home and do them, right? And so after you've gone home to do those exercises, sometimes there can be a loss in effectiveness in terms of the operator doing it correctly and also the frequency that it's being done. So by monitoring the motion itself, we can detect the trend and also the frequency of actually doing the exercises. We're also working on a feedback loop system that utilizes machine learning based on the data that we've been gathering from our sensors to train a model, which in turn interacts with our actuator to help a person be retrained in the operation. So these are the actuators themselves. So these are pneumatic actuators. The black structure is a resistance-based sensor designed just like the actuator, and so it's monitoring the deformation of the end effector or actuator. We've also tried different materials. So I showed you the material we produced. It is slightly stiffer because we added conductive particles and they're hard. So it is slightly stiffer if you look at a stress strain curve in comparison to the viscoelastic material. So it does cause a small decrease in basically achievable actuation with it. So we also looked at embedding conductive grease. Conductive grease is also a great conduit for electroactive polymer actuation, so we can do dual activation. But these results just demonstrate direct ink writing utilizing conductive grease in a pneumatic actuator. So here we've got our pneumatic actuator structure. This was a gripper that was picking up something, so it's not a hand design, it's just gripping. And it shows the conductive grease substrate being placed into our actuator in the end picture, in the rightmost picture. Using the same type of modality and design, we've also created different types of actuator structures. So this was to pick up cylindrical components. And we have our capacitance-based sensors embedded in this actuator. And you can monitor the capacitance or grasp. So that's the goal here. The resistance monitors the deformation, right? But when you're actually picking up something in the real world, you need to know where you're at and also how hard you're grasping it, right? So the capacitance sensor monitors how hard I'm grabbing it, and then the deformation tells me where my location is. So I need both pieces of information in order to actually have a full system. So here you can see, that's the testing setup for it. Here you can see the capacitance results. So that change in grasp of that cylindrical structure. This is once again showing the 7.5 weight percent and the 10 weight percent. The 10 performs far better in this application. I told you it had a larger range based on the cylinders that we were using. That's the best. That's the best sensor for our design. But you can see a change in basically the grasp, the pressure that you're feeling on that cylinder based on the size of it. So overall, we start from the bottom up. So we create materials designed to meet sensing and in turn actuation needs. And then we work within that using modeling and experimental testing to optimize those designs. There are numerous applications for this in the healthcare industry, in prosthetics, rehabilitation therapies, also in braces. We've been looking at prosthetics in terms of fit even. So in terms of monitoring like pressure distributions in a prosthetic fit. I also work on custom mobility devices. So in the US, wheelchairs aren't available for children that are insurance, supplied insurance doesn't pay for it until age 5. So we also build custom mobility devices. So it's basically a wheelchair built from a child's battery operated car. We 3D print parts for that because kids are different sizes, and so they have different hand sizes to grip. And also head space in the back. So we 3D print a lot of our parts for those to match their needs. And then also in monitoring, just like the past discussion was. We have also used these sensors in shoes. So we used our silicone-based sensors using the same type of design. And we monitor different exercises. So walking, running, weightlifting, how that impacts the foot. So there's lots of different applications. And that's where I'll leave the discussion. I thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you and to discuss this work.
Okay, hi. Today I will present to you about the 충청북도 Smart Big Data Platform. So my presentation will be followed by this order. So first, I introduce to you about the biomedical big data, healthcare big data, and the difficulties to collect the biomedical big data. Second, I introduce the 충북 Smart Big Data Platform, characteristics of 충북 Smart Big Data Platform, and the advantages of these systems. Okay, let's talk about the biomedical big data. This is the diagram for about the traditional scientific research. So When we probe some hypothesis, this hypothesis is generated by the observation or research, in vitro research. And then to validate this hypothesis, we use conducting the randomized controlled trial, like the clinical trials of patient. And after that, using this result, we can lead to the new knowledge. But this traditional method has some limitations. The first, this new knowledge should be obtained hypothesis from relatively small data sets. This is the diagram about the clinical trials in humans. So new molecular entities probe this process, and even if the phase 3 clinical trials ended, the investigators probe the data or hypothesis using only a small number of patient database of small number of patients, about some thousand people. This is well-known information about the COVID-19 clinical trials. Due to the unique situation about the pandemic, this COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials was conducted using over 10,000 people. But even the number of patients who involved the clinical trials, they can't probe the rare adverse events such as myocarditis or pericarditis. So in this point, the big biomedical big data collection of biomedical big data is important to us. This screenshot is famous big data site named Patient Like Me. This site has information on over 600,000 patients with 3,000 diseases, and in this site, the patient is shared the information about rare disease, and in this site, they can recruit about the clinical trials with the rare disease. Furthermore, the mobile wearable device using of mobile wearable device is increasing. Even I don't have anyone because of my small salaries. There are no our hospital directors, isn't it? Yes. So using this wearable device, we can collect extensive biomedical data from daily life. But some limitations of this big data, collecting the big data, first is lack of digitalized information. Most medical institutions in Korea have adopted the electronic medical record, but many of past medical records are only available as images like that. And second, the data collection in medical institutions like hospitals is fundamentally for treatment to patient. So the basic information regarding patient identification and treatment is generally similar, but information collected for treatment purpose varies in type and amount depending on the medical field or disease characteristics. Also, collecting data from multi-centers, it is difficult to obtain high-quality data because terminology is not standardized and different terms are used by each institution. The third thing is the utilization of personal information. So when we use this personal data, we must obtain consent for data use. But according to the guideline related to the bioethics law, previously collected data can be used with one of them, consent from patient or pseudonymization and anonymization. It's difficult to pronounce. However,
for unstructured free text information, for example, the medical record by medical doctors. This pseudonymization or anonymization may not be possible, especially for samples like tissue and blood. They have name tag to identification the specimens, so pseudonymization can be challenging. Also, in multi-center studies, if consent for third-party provision has not been obtained, the legal issues may arise. So, recognizing these difficulties, we developed the 충청북도 Smart Big Data Platforms. So, the 충북 Smart Data Platform construction project is supervised by 충청북도, and the total project period about 3 years. So our project has some characteristics below that. The user lead data operation procedures based on demand, and high data quality improvement through terminology standardization and implementation of data quality control and validation process. And last, we adopt the CDW clinical data warehouse based on pseudonymization and electronic consent systems. So our project has four topics, and task 1 is to set the multi-center big data platform based on electronic data capture systems named ARBO for real clinical research. And task 2 is the construction for the operation systems. So we want to establish a big data platform operation system and quality control plans. And task 3 and task 4 is to collect the real clinical data. So task 3 is to collect the human-derived material, and task 4 is the data from each disease. So this is the collection. This is the project about the collection of real data. Our big data platform is named as ARBO. So this platform based on the electronic data capture system. All of you knows giving a good name is very important to, and it's related to the success of the project. So we are very many discussion for the name. So this name is derived from the Latin word arbo. It's named tree. We imagine the machine learning process about the random forest or the data stacking like a tree. This electronic data capture system is usually using the clinical trials. So this is a system that collects and handles clinical data using a series of management systems, including electronic document, instead of traditional paper-based case report forms. We adopt blockchain and smartphone application systems and integrated them into our systems to collect the consent of a subject. So when you start these ARBO smartphone applications, you can find this screen with the QR code. And after you picture this QR code and this consent form will occur, so you can easily explain and obtain the consent from patient using these smartphone applications. But remote consent is currently challenging because of the legal issues. But it will be improved because we are now conducting some pilot project with MFDS, Korean FDA. So it will be improved to adopt the remote consent. Because we are set this ARBO platform to conduct a multi-institutional study, so it is essential to install these ARBO systems on each hospital or each institution's server is the first thing to conduct this project. Using tools like clinical data warehouse, data from each institution is uploaded to the main site's archive of the site. In this process, the data mapping process is used to standardize the different terminologies used by each institutions. From the next slide, I will show you the real operation screens. So this is the screen to configure input field or data corresponding to database values. It is possible to configure various field types and detailed item settings about each field type. And this constitution screen is predefined according to the database specification following by SDTM standard. When we after the set up the EDC, and then the main cloud server will share this EDC of each site to enable this multi-center data capturing systems. This blank CRF following by SDTM standard is built on the archive of main cloud server and share them to each site. The third thing is data mapping process. Even if the same meaning, different items used in each medical institution, so data mapping is standardized the terms used differently each medical institution in unified terms in archive. This is the example of data mapping process. So the site A is using the gender terminology as recording about M, and site B use the nam, is meaning male. So we are after the data mapping. This terminology is also unified. The terms with the male is the standard SDTM terminologies. After that, each site, each institution input data using the data extraction process with the clinical data warehouse. So previously, we performed the synchronized process about the structured CW with the electronic data capture systems through mapping. So when you click this Get EMR button, the data is automatically input our EDC systems. This is the data validation screen. So we use these data validation specifications to ensure the consistency and accuracy of the collected data. And last, the data transfer is performed. So the information of each site is transferred to the main cloud server to integrate the multi-center study. So this data transfer cycle from each argos of the site to the main cloud server is set in the predefined data transfer specifications. Since argos, this central cloud server is within an independent network, separate from the hospital's networks. So the remote data monitoring can be performed. Okay, this is summary of our archive systems. So when we conduct the clinical trial or some project or data collections, this process will be occurred. So the first, our data management system is archive, and second, the development of data management plan is we apply a guideline from the clinical data interchange standard consortium. And third, when we consist the DB structure, we can use data mapping and to collect the high quality biomedical data through standardized terminology across multi-centers by simplified process. And last, we using data validation to ensure data reliability through the tracking and quality management or data reconciliations. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
This is my turn, and I'll talk about smart city challenge for Chungbuk province's emergency healthcare. Again, my major is emergency medicine. I also studied preventive medicine as a master course, and my research fields are emergency medical service systems and also automotive medicine. And I'm a medical positions director for Regional Emergency Medical Center and Regional Medical Support Center and Regional Medical Support Organization. And I talk regarding what's the Emergency Medical Service System (EMS) and the North Chungcheong provincial challenge to improve emergency medical service system through Smart City Challenge project and medical devices for healthcare system in the field of emergency medicine. EMS is the expansion of the emergency medical care in the pre-hospital phase from the patient reaches the scene and to the hospital discharge after rehabilitation and the definitive care. There are so many rated elements. We say the 15 elements to lessen the patient the complication and mortality, including those things: the disaster plan and consumer participation and the public information and education for public, and manpower, access to care and transportation and patient transfer and communication for the pre-hospital phase, and also the other the elements for hospital phase. The effectiveness of EMS in saving lives lie on how well established those therapeutic elements in our community. The North Chungcheong province is situated at the center of the South Korea and comprised of 3 cities and 8 counties with a population of 1.6 million residents. And the province is divided by the 7 other regions and divided into the specific area, the 3 specific areas, north and the central and the southern regions. And so as a geographic the factor and limited medical resources, the Chungcheong province is identified as the vulnerable and medically underserved area, except the Cheongju city. Consequently, the rate of avoidable mortality is the highest among the 17 total provinces in Korea. Furthermore, the emergency medical manpower, the number of emergency medical specialists is 1.3 per 100,000 population. So the lowest among the Korean the 17 provinces. So it is the urgent intervention is needed to improve the emergency medical service system and to change the vulnerable emergency environment in our province. Since 2017, we have operated Chungbuk Regional Emergency Medical Council to improve the emergency medical service system in our province. And we discussed how to establish how to success the emergency medical regionalization and how to improve the transportation system in the pre-hospital phase and hospital phase to transport the patient into hospital. And as a result of the Regional Medical Council the management, we had an opportunity to start the 충북스마트응급의료사업단 Medical Service Pioneer Project in 2021, utilizing information and communication technology. This is a pilot project result. The patient diversion rate it means the patient using the 119 ambulance. At first, they visited the emergency room. However, they don't accept the patient, so the patient should be transported to the another hospital. It's the concept of the diversion. The diversion rate has reduced from 0.7 to 0.03, and also the emergency medical patient transportation time for the critical patient has reduced from 19 minutes to 8 minutes, total 11 minutes for the severe trauma patient by the support of the police the headquarters. From the excellent preliminary study result, we started the main project of the Smart City Challenge. The first project is ICT-EMS, of sharing the information to facilitate the patient to the designated hospital. Using the automatic triage and automatic selection of the transport hospital at the scene. The paramedics enter the patient the problem into the application. That information can be transported to the several hospitals which has the medical available resources. So this method we easily choose the patient for the patient transportation. And in a main project, the 12 fire departments and 18 hospitals joined this project. Also, the rated the institution, including the public the facilities and the fire headquarters that joined this project. The second is citizens EMS. The citizen participation engagement is the crucial to establish the smart city, especially to educate the emergency medical service system, the concept to the public. We developed the application to provide the information for reasonable use of emergency medical care, and also provide appropriate medical facilities in the situation of emergency the situation. And in the real emergency situation, for example, the cardiac arrest patient occurred, the public places. This app has a function to enhance the citizens' participation and give information, the location of the AED, and the volunteers already had an education of the rescue and do CPR, can activate to the scene to give you the CPR before the paramedics arrive to the scene. And the third is the big data, ICT big data. We try to build the big data platform to collect and analyze the patient the data between pre-hospital and hospital phase participated in our the project from the 18 institutions. And this information can be used to make the policy and improve the environmental services the system in our province. And the fourth is the tele-EMS based on the data support center, which has a function helping the paramedics to transport the patient to designated hospital, also give medical direction to the paramedics during the critical patient transportation by using the video and the audio devices. This data support center you visited before this seminar will play a key role in the smart healthcare system in our province in the future. And let me introduce the medical devices in the field of the medical service system, which I tried to invent or develop, and also has the patent in the process of the project. The figure is the channel survivor. In terms of the CPR, it is a very important concept. If cardiac arrest victim occurred, all of this the chain and it should be connected to each the step. It has more probability to save lives during the CPR. So many the devices related to this channel survival can be applicable in the medical field. The first is activation of emergency response. If the emergency patient occurred, it is important to activate 109, and from the application we have developed, it has a function to share the information of occurrence and also the guide the location of AED, and it can be used in the early phase of the CPR before the specialist, paramedics arrive at the scene. The second step is high quality CPR. The CPR guideline revised every 5 years. This guideline can be practiced within a smartphone application. So compression rate and the frequency of the ventilation are guided within a smartphone application. Also, the compression rate can be guided with the gyro sensor in the smartphone application. Through the dysfunction in the application of the smartphone, we can give the high quality CPR. The third is the defibrillation. Defibrillation is a so important action to the cardiac arrest, would show the ventricular fibrillation in electrocardiography. During the CPR activation, the paramedics should deliver so many the medical equipment, including patient monitor and the pulse kit and the AED and then so forth. So one device is including all device's function is needed to simplify the equipment during activation. So we can think about the all-in-one emergency kit for monitoring and diagnosing severe emergency patients during the activation. And the first is the transportation. We experienced the COVID-19 the pandemic for the years from 2021. At the early stage of the COVID pandemic, a patient who has a fever and with a mental status change, unstable mental status, the patient, if the patient visits the emergency room, who suspicious of stroke, the stroke patient has a golden hour to check the MRI and to give a thrombolytic therapy. However, at the early of the pandemic, the patient has a limitation to check the MRI. So we studied some multifunctional devices, multifunctional isolation stretcher cart that has the function of isolation for the suspicious infection patient. Also have a hyperbaric chamber to treat the monoxide poisoning, and also checking our MRI with the specialized isolation stretcher, and also monitor the patient with the wireless biopads that contact the patient. We can monitor the infection suspicious patient, the vital sign inside of the isolation stretch cart with the biopads. This is the result of my colleagues who majored in electrical engineering, as I mentioned yesterday to Robert. And I'll explain the medical devices to monitor the high-risk patient, including the cardiac disease, or also pregnant woman is our the main the subject because the rate of birth, the birth rate of Korea is so low among OECD countries. The birth rate is the lowest. So the North 충북 province as well as Korea focus on making a strategy to increase the birth rate. So we do a project to monitor high-risk pregnant women. For example, the pregnant-induced hypertension is the severe disease for pregnant women, diagnosed of high blood pressure and edema and proteinuria. So we corrected the high-risk pregnant woman and to monitor the chemistry and the physiologic the parameters and the urine analysis, and we will spread the project to all of the across of the province in next year. And the next project is to develop the all-in-one device. I tried to ask the question to the doctor in the previous session. My question was, can we develop the device to monitor all of the parameters for diagnosing the pregnant-induced hypertension? Also, the concept is applicable for the high-risk cardiac patient, and developing the medical devices for the monitor based on the community is my research concern. And we also do a project of the healthcare system for nursing hospital. We make a rapid response system between nursing hospital and day support center to monitor the patient vital sign and heart rate variability. Before I studied the heart rate variability, I researched regarding the smart coronary stent. It is function of checking the cardiac enzyme without the sampling of the blood, and it has a function to monitor the pressure through the smart stent. Stent has a function to check the pressure. Before the complaint of chest pain, the patient, it can easily monitor the pressure change, so it can predict the development of myocardial infarction. So the predicting the myocardial infarction, it can save the lives and also treat the patient in organs. If the smart stent can be invented, we can monitor very high-risk patient who got the procedure of percutaneous intervention within the community. However, we failed the fund from the government because it's just so invasive the research. So, and my major is emergency medicine, not a cardiologist. So it's some limitation to do the research. So instead of inventing the invasive smart stent, I did the research regarding heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is the standard deviation of RR interval in the electrocardiography. Heart rate variability can be used many disease categories: cardiovascular disease, and brain disease, and metabolic disease. It gives many information in those diseases. It has many parameters in time domain and frequency domain, and all these parameters can be used to monitor the change of disease status. And there are many studies regarding heart rate variability. It showed prognostic. It is a prognostic indicator of itinerary event after myocardial infarction. Also, the patient with the heart failure, this heart rate variability is indicator of increased risk of mortality. It also the study for the non-cardiac the patient predicting sudden cardiac death. Also studied in cardiac arrest and during COVID-19 pandemic. This decreased heart rate variability was associated with the poor outcome of the COVID-19 patient. So to check the heart rate variability for the patient visiting our emergency room, we established the data collection and analysis system in the critical area in our emergency room. We collecting the many data from the patient to the monitor, and we collect analyze the EKG and correct the heart rate variability to verify to prognose, to predict the sudden cardiac death a patient who visit the emergency room. The other occasionally the patient who visit the emergency room, unpredictably they made a sudden cardiac death in the emergency room. So the predicting the sudden cardiac death is so important to prevent the patient death, also prevent the medical issue. The activation from the I explained the concept of tenure survival and read to the emergency medical. I studied many kinds of the medical devices from activation of emergency response and to the recovery. The devices can be used to monitor the high-risk patient, also specific patient, based on our premise, using the data support center. So we'll make the smart healthcare the system based on the promise to follow the safe the society. This is my another challenge. My life is ongoing challenge for the saving lives. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. What I want to talk about, and I modified these a little bit after our conversation, our wonderful dinner last night, because I kind of do things in threes, I learned that in Korean culture, okay, 3 is a good number, but I'm going to talk about 3 things of 3, which gives us 9, which I hear is an even better number. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my background because I have my degrees are in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and computer science because I'm interested in robotics fundamentally and cyber physical systems, and that kind of cuts across the core of adding perception with cognition and actuation. And I also have experience in across academia and government and industry as well as startups. And I want to talk about the problem, and I've spent some time in government, not only at NSF but at the White House, and we looked at policy and issues of, and I think in healthcare, one of the big problems is labor shortage. And we've been actually looking at how to make human-like robots that can actually help solve this this looming labor problem that's driven by a number of things. We're all aware of the silvering or the graying of societies in general. This is U.S. data. We also have some Japanese data, which Japan is kind of leading this right now. And you can see it's very much inverted, and that's what we mean by populations are inverted. Right? This is 1980 when I first graduated. Now this is estimated, kind of what's predicted for the U.S. distribution. And of course, we rely on us old folks, right? Rely on the young folks to help support us, and that is what, of course, is inverting across the world. One exception is India right now, but and you can kind of Japan has been leading that, as I said, that they're already completely inverted. And that's causing a number of problems, but also, we've seen a lot about kind of not just the silver society, but the kind of quitting society, right? There was the Great Resignation during the pandemic, there's increasingly this question of willingness to work at kind of any wage, in some job categories, and particularly healthcare, and healthcare is one of those. The increasing focus on work-life balance, menial tasks, helping with activities of daily living, for elder care as being a big problem. And then we we think a lot as engineers and scientists about how we change technology and how we develop technology. And what we're learning really for the first time in the last few 20 years or so, starting with video games and other things, is how technology is actually changing us. And so these things are really important. And you know, as I don't have to go over all the numbers, these are just some examples, right, of what's happening with labor in healthcare. You know, in 2021, you know, roughly 25, and this is U.S. data, you know, roughly 25% of seniors were getting some sort of ongoing care for activities of daily living, right? And with this inversion happening and again increasing longevity of humans just in general, Americans in this case, right? That by 2035, population of seniors is expected to exceed the population of minors for the first time in U.S. history. And you know, this need for, again, who's going to provide this care? We rely, you know, us old folks rely on younger either family. And a lot of this is family members, but again, we're having smaller families. You know, as of today, right now, all jobs, meaning not just healthcare and elder care, but kind of all jobs are around 10 million. And the number of available workers right now is at 7.6. Again, this is U.S. data. The projection is that very soon, elder care and healthcare, the job gap in just the elder care and healthcare industries is going to be about 1 million jobs that are there's just nobody to do these. And of course, we saw with healthcare this increased emphasis on worker safety as well, not just the problem of who's going to do this labor, but maintaining with essential employees, essential workers in healthcare in particular, but also in retail and other fields, right? That there are a number of things you have to do. So the importance of addressing this gap is not just because of one of those factors, but for all of these reasons is becoming a really serious problem. And so I look from the standpoint of robots now. It used to be you know, bad idea to try to replace jobs, right? To replace people with robots. Now this is becoming a necessity because there just aren't people, and it's going to get worse and worse, right? And that's what we mean by the magnification, okay, of these jobs. But also, what's really exciting, I think, about what some of the opportunities are of how to scale up training so that we can bring people into particularly kinesthetic jobs. Things that you can't just get from learning in a book, right? You know, when you're talking about activities and how to teach people to do activities related to their jobs. And one of these examples is mechanisms for patient transfer in healthcare. That, you know, patients are heavy, and so OSHA requires, in the U.S. work requirements, OSHA requirements require, you know, a minimum of 2 people, and how to do this so that workers don't get injured, but also so the patients themselves don't get injured. And traditionally, you know, we've applied, you know, physics-based approaches to how to solve this, which I think is just, and here are a couple of examples. This is kind of a robotic or even manually controlled lifts. And then tried to use some kind of conventional robotic approaches to helping to lift basically humans as cargo in transferring them, say, from a bed to a wheelchair and such a things. But what are really the problems here and why these systems, in my opinion, haven't been very successful? Because they're clunky and aren't often easy to use either for the patient or for the nurses or other practitioners that are trying to solve these problems. And it really has nothing to do with the physics, which is what we focused on and how to solve these problems. You know, what's the weight balance and how do we make sure that they're stable and finding the center of mass. And those aren't the tough problems here. The tough problems are, first off, the patients are often anxious when they're getting in, you know, they're going to get picked up, and it's like, oh, that's kind of weird. Who's doing it? And what if I fall? And what if I get hurt? And all these other things. You know, the emotional response of the patient is key. Because if they get scared or feel pain, discomfort, you know, these are things that robots aren't programmed to notice. Humans do that very well and naturally, and don't really have to be taught that, oh, if you're hurting a patient, try something different, because they've been in that situation before, right? Oh, they know what discomfort is. Robots don't. And again, the humans in fear due to an emotional response may actually do the wrong thing, or that the caregiver, the lifter, is trying to do, or may inadvertently just kind of oppose what the person is doing and cause more instability. And so it's not just about safety and, it's not just about comfort and feelings, but also about safety, right, for all these. And we have to consider all these things much more important than the physics-based kind of approaches. So with that in mind, remember I said, okay, so I have these degrees in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and computer science. What is it we do in the robotics lab? And traditionally in robotics, we also, a branch of it we refer to as cyber physical systems, or CPS. You know, we talk about this gap between the cyber and the physical worlds. And that's traditionally what we talk about, really programming and sensors and actuation and how the algorithms that, again, through that implement physics to make these happen. We also talk about this divide in terms of the bits and the atoms. Okay, that these are two things that are quantizations of elements in these two worlds that there aren't direct analogies for, and that's, again, we're trying to create bridges between them. And in CPS, with these things, the laws of these, which also we refer to as the digital and analog, are kind of derived by, you know, Alan Turing and von Neumann, who's about computing and what is computable and things like that. In the physical world, we talk about Newton's laws and Einsteinian laws, you know, in terms of relativity, if you really want to get exotic. But those are kind of what we tend to think about. And that's what we talk about in our standard engineering classes, in our computer science classes, or how do all these things work. But there's another axis here that's being ignored that I kind of mentioned. The real problems don't follow those laws and aren't really addressed. And I call this, you know, that in a branch of cyber physical systems we call cyber physical social systems. That we try to address these often subjective things about feelings, emotional state, moods, fear, anxiety, that aren't as easy to objectively quantify. Again, so this is the way we like to think about systems, right? And often these are, again, different areas. I'm not trained in these kind of laws, with, you know, developed by the philosophers, Kant and Nietzsche, or the psychologists and sociologists, on how to deal with, again, what are the impact on reaction, on thought processes, again, of these other set of laws that kind of help separate the sentient or the logical in thinking. And so I think this is this is a growing area of robotics and AI, where we're trying to put these pieces together, which means there are a whole lot of other things we have to talk about. How do we recognize fear? How do we recognize anxiety? How do we recognize some of these other things? And then how do we create bridges at different levels where AI, again, is very logical. You know, it looks at probabilistic models of how humans might behave. But, you know, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you know, that's not, general probabilities don't really describe that very well. And humans have this very, very subjective comparison. And then, of course, there are different levels of that scale as well, of these bridges between the cyber and the physical worlds. That I think that my group tries to explore, again, with other experts in human sciences, in animal sciences, because we look at how animals have a different set of subjectivity involved. And of course, these AI agents right now, again, are behaving very logically, but if we're going to push them to be more like humans, AI agents that we may create are going to span much more of that space. And I mentioned animals, I mentioned human systems, so that's kind of the things that my lab has a very large grasp in terms of application areas, where we're interested in things like nursing home and elder care, and also health care. Particularly, we've looked at how, during COVID, we looked at how disinfection and employee distancing affected, again, workers, in potentially essential workers. But I also do things in agriculture, and basically we're talking about what we often refer to as human-in-the-loop systems. These often are associated with different levels of autonomy, but there are also animals in the loop, and there are other AI agents that may be in the loop. And emergency response is another one of these areas where it's also high pressure for employees, because with a wide-scale emergency, you've got first responders, you've got emergency responders, it all kind of come together. You have this golden hour of 48 to 72 hours, or this golden window of 48 to 72 hours, where you want to get help to injured people, and often they don't get to sleep, so they're sleep deprived, as well as there's emotional drain of going through that, especially if you're uncovering a lot of people who have become victims of the situation. And so I'm going to talk quickly about some examples of these. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to go into a lot of depth of some of these approaches that we've been running in different approaches. And one of these is start out with COVID, where there were a lot of systems when COVID first happened or started to emerge. Is, okay, this is a great application for robotics because, of course, the emergency rooms were getting overwhelmed, and there was a lot of focus on emergency room cleaning with ultraviolet UVC disinfection. And so we thought, well, okay, this is something that we can do to kind of help things. Looked at, well, how do you develop, because most of the approaches were, just actual lights on wheels, right? And so they get pushed in by a human, and but they get pushed into a human in an emergency room, say, where there was potentially someone who was diagnosed with COVID now, and now you got to disinfect the room. Well, so the first thing you do is you put a human in there with a light. Okay, and then eventually they run out and turn on the light to try to initially disinfect things. But again, that's line of sight, if they don't get directly irradiated, so that it's like, okay, this is a great task for robots to automatically kind of move around and shine light in different places. And we also tried to look at, as the pandemic expanded in essential employees outside of emergency rooms, well, this should be great for health, for retail applications, because suddenly cashiers were essential people, and they were getting exposed to COVID many times a day. But this doesn't work very well in a retail scenario, basically anywhere humans are, because UVC is not the greatest thing to be shining on people. There's some debate over that, but normally humans say, oh, I want to avoid because of the cancer risk. Although UVC is perhaps best of the ABC wavelengths. There just wasn't many approaches to do human presence, right? Disinfection where human were actually involved in the process, like retail. And so when we went to talk to some of the retail establishments, they were like, that doesn't really help us at all, the UVC lights. They said, that'd be great at night, But that's not my problem. I've got to, going and cleaning shelves is great, but my worry is every customer, I've got to disinfect the cash, the point of sale system. And I have to, every time they grab a little shopping cart and they push it around, I've got to disinfect that handle and things like that. And again, these are when humans are present. And there wasn't any approach really to do that. And that's one thing we developed was, okay, we're going to use UVC to kill potential microbes. It is very effective on either bacteria or viruses, but we don't want it shining on the humans. And the approach we came up to was, and air filtration with HEPA filters was not very effective because the problem with HEPA filters is they tend to be stationary and they cause a lot of wake. And that's even worse because it stirs up all these microbes, virus particles in particular that could have fallen to the ground. It's just going to stir them up. And so what we came up with was inspired by baleen whales, actually. If you've seen the science shows when I was a kid, of the giant whales, these huge mouths, and they just kind of drift silently through the ocean, collecting little plankton, and leaving very little wake, right? If you go really fast through a cloud of plankton, right, the ripples from the whale will kind of disperse the plankton. And so that's bad. And that's exactly what we want to do, is not stir up virus particles, but just have the robot kind of drift through, intelligently figuring out, using particle sensors, detectors, I should say, and just kind of sucking these things up with very little wake so it's not blowing things around. And by using smart technologies through real-time simulation, we could then use these particle detectors to actually try to figure out, hey, wait a minute, this is not what we would expect. We could run airflow simulations in real time with some basically gaming type physics engines and do real-time simulations so that while the robot was driving through, say, and we used them in our classroom because that's what we cared about, was not empty rooms. What about classrooms where the kids were? How can we increase safety for them? And so that's an example, again, using a combination of mechanism, of clever sensor design, and cognition, the AI, computer science, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering, to come up with a really novel system or a solution to the problem. And here's a simple example where we said, oh, how would this work in a classroom environment? Again, in office room environments, we looked at cruise ships and things like that. Now, another part of this, I'm going to shift gears completely. I'm just about out of time. But I want to talk also about how the importance in this list of challenges is that, particularly in a healthcare scenario, in an elder care scenario where you have humans in the loop, we want robots to learn and behave like humans. Not because humans are the best models for a robot, but because they're the ones that the robots have to interact with. Okay, so they want them to be very intuitive to the human users and people in the loop, whether they're the patient or another caregiver. And so, and what we have currently for programming robots to do tasks is you write the procedure down in a foreign language and then, try to explain to the robot what to do. That's what we call programming. And that's not very amenable to what humans do, particularly with kinesthetic tasks. And that's what we're talking about, doing things and learning how to do things. And so how do humans do it? And lots of people say practice makes perfect. But that's not necessarily true, because how do you get that kid to become Michael Jordan? Not just good, but great, right? And what's missing in the learning literature is the coach. This is Phil Jackson, coach of the Chicago Bulls, right? And the point is, coaching, learning and practice do optimize performance to a certain degree, but that's what coaching does in terms of making things great. And humans use 3 steps generally to learn. There's the initial thing is imitation learning. You see all these people standing around watching, right? You can watch and get ideas of, oh, here's how to play basketball. Now, that's a very theoretical and sequence-based study of what to happen. And if you go out there and practice, you're probably not very good at it initially. But then that's that second form of learning where you take those initial observations of, oh, here's the goal, here's how you kind of generally do it, but I really have no idea how heavy the ball is, I have no good idea of how hard it is to get it in that size of a hoop. So, you, through reinforcement, right, you practice, practice, practice. Again, doesn't quite make perfect, but it does make better. But we often, it's slow, people might get frustrated, and you run into plateaus, okay? Local maxima. And that's kind of where coaching comes in, right? Because these forces of imitation and reinforcement are really aimed at just task success. You go, okay, you develop a model of how to get the ball in the hoop, but not optimally, okay? And that's that question of performance. And it turns out that in external feedback, that coaching is often very subtle. And there are analogies all to this to the computer science literature. And so what the gaps are here is, you know, coaching has not been studied hardly at all in the robotics and this learning literature when you're talking about kinesthetic tasks. There's another gap that matters, is the style of the performer. You know, when we see this, we don't have good ways of categorizing it, but we can see it with the way people dance, the way people walk, the way people run, all kinds of things. That style matters to the mechanism and the way people perform. But it's hard to classify, and that also has been largely ignored in the literature. And then finally, what is really exciting, that I kind of end with here, is, wait a minute. If we can get robots to learn from coaching, right? Just like Michael Jordan, he learned from a coach, then he went off to Washington and became a coach. Because he had learned from coaches how to not only be a good player, but how to coach others because he learned by coaching. That's what we refer to as reverse coaching. If robots can learn from human experts, from human coaches, they can not only get better, they can learn to be amplifiers of teaching. And then we can have robots teach other novice humans, right, in kinesthetic tasks, where you can't just explain the process, you have to show them what to do and then let them adapt it to their own bodies and their own personal style, okay? And that's what is, I think, really exciting, because for a long time we were really upset by saying we're going to replace humans. And now we have to, right? We have such a gap in the needs versus the labor pool available, but we still need to be conscious of you know, the workforce and workforce development. We can't cut out everybody and replace them with robots, then nobody will have a job, right? And so we also want to do not just augmentation, right, meaning robots to help humans, but magnification by allowing robots to help train new humans to do these tasks. And I'm not going to go over the details of you know, too much of these three phrases because time is out. But that's the bottom line of how all this works, is there are 3 stages that go on. We've got what in the computer science literature is called one-shot learning, where we give one example. That's kind of watching somebody shoot a basket and then say, oh, I can do that, right? But then you move on and go, oh, wait a minute. I got to practice that, and this is harder than I thought, right? And you do that over and over and over again. We call that end-shot learning. And we refer to the coaching part, what computer scientists refer to as zero-shot learning. And what this 1 and n and 0 refer to is how many labeled examples do we show. And normally we say, hey, if you want to train an AI network to learn the difference between a cat and a dog, you show it a whole bunch of pictures of cats and a whole bunch of pictures of dogs, and you label them and say, that's a dog, that's a cat. But humans are actually very good without those labels. When we practice, if the ball goes in the hoop, that's labeled. Did it score or not? Okay. But we say, get more hemp into it. What does that mean? I had no idea what that meant. Okay? It wasn't labeled. It was a suggestion. And then he'd try to show me something, get more hip, do this, and eventually, you kind of threw, and so again, I think that's the kind of the magic here of what coaching, a formalization for coaching. And we also developed a formalization for style. And now we're trying to apply these to, we did them to a simple cricothyroidotomy application, but now we don't like, of course, invasive procedures are difficult to test. So we have small amounts of data. And so one of the things we've been doing is how to use machine translation from either simulations or other robots from a small number of samples using simulation to help learn more and more. But in the meantime, we're applying it to sonography and ultrasound. Another problem that's exploding in use, but we don't have enough sonographers. And so we're trying to apply this to but it's a very kinesthetic task, right? You have to do it to learn how to do it, right? And so, again, we're going to have, that'll provide, in rural areas, maybe there is no one trained, let's get a robot, a sonographer out there to do some tests. But also, we can use the robots to train new sonographers, right? And kind of solve the labor problem from both sides. Okay? Let's talk about one other thing, and time's up, so I think that's good. All right, thank you. That's all I'm going to say for now, and I think there are a lot of opportunities in medical devices that can actually perform. I think this is entering a new realm in AI that can include some model-based information and get higher and higher performance. Thank you.